The island of Java just became the world's largest prison. At exactly 7 a.m. this morning, Mount Raung erupted on Java's eastern border. 34 seconds later, Mount Semeru joined the conversation. Within minutes, volcanic ash clouds began merging above Indonesia's most crowded island, and 145 million people suddenly realized they had nowhere to run. Java is not just experiencing 2 volcanic eruptions. According to seismic data released in the last hour, it is experiencing the beginning of a chain reaction that could activate every one of the island's 127 active volcanic systems. Scientists tracking the underground pressure waves describe what is happening as unprecedented, a synchronized awakening of volcanic forces that have been building tension for decades. Each eruption sends stress signals through Java's interconnected magma chambers, and each response grows stronger than the last. The terrifying mathematics are simple. Java packs more people per square mile than almost anywhere on Earth. 145 million residents live directly above a volcanic network that spans the entire 1,000-kilometre length of the island. When volcanoes start erupting simultaneously, evacuation becomes impossible. History offers only one comparison: the 1883 Krakatoa explosion that shattered windows 150 miles away and dropped global temperatures for 3 years. But Krakatoa was a single volcano on an uninhabited island. What happens when an entire archipelago's worth of volcanic force awakens beneath the most populated island in the world? And how long before Java's 145 million residents discover that being surrounded by the ocean is not protection, it is entrapment? The last time Java truly awakened, it announced itself to the entire planet. August 27th, 1883. Krakatoa exploded with the force of 200 megatons, 4 times more powerful than the largest nuclear bomb ever detonated. The sound was heard 3,000 miles away in Australia. The explosion threw 5 cubic miles of earth 50 miles into the sky and generated tsunami waves 120 feet high that killed 36,000 people across Java and Sumatra. But Krakatoa was just one voice in Java's volcanic choir. This 1,000-kilometre long island sits directly above one of Earth's most violent geological boundaries, where the Indo-Australian plate dives beneath the Eurasian plate at nearly 7 centimetres per year. That collision creates a chain of 127 active volcanoes running the entire length of Java, each one a potential outlet for the immense pressure building deep underground. What makes Java's volcanic systems particularly dangerous is that they aren't just scattered mountains, they are connected. Recent deep Earth imaging has revealed something terrifying. Beneath Java's surface, there is an intricate network of interconnected conduits, fault systems and pressure chambers extending up to 700 kilometers deep into Earth's mantle. Mount Raung, which initiated today's synchronized eruption, is one of Java's most active stratovolcanoes. Mount Raung is located in East Java. It features a dramatic, steep-walled caldera 2 kilometers wide, where frequent historical eruptions have occurred. With over 60 recorded eruptions since the late 16th century, Raung has been a consistent threat. Its largest historical eruption occurred in 1593, reaching a magnitude 5 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index scale, powerful enough to cause catastrophic regional damage. Mount Semeru, the second volcano in today's synchronized event, is Java's highest volcano at 3,676 meters and one of its most active. It has been in almost continuous eruption since 1967, with regular ash explosions typically occurring at intervals of 10 to 30 minutes. In December 2021, Semeru experienced a significant eruption that killed over 50 people and displaced more than 10,000 villagers. Modern estimates show Java experiences volcanic eruptions on average every 3.7 years. Since 1000 AD, scientists have documented 280 separate eruptions across the island. Mount Merapi alone has erupted over 60 times in the past 500 years. Mount Semeru has been in almost continuous eruption since 1967. Scientists have always treated these as independent events, separate volcanoes with separate magma chambers, separate triggers, separate timelines. But new deep Earth imaging reveals a terrifying truth. Java's volcanoes are not independent at all. They are connected by a vast network of fault lines and magma conduits that spans the entire island. The geology is unprecedented. 145 million people are living directly above interconnected volcanic systems that could theoretically erupt simultaneously. No other place on Earth combines this level of volcanic danger with this density of human population. California's volcanic hazards affect thousands. Italy's Vesuvius threatens millions. But Java's awakening could trap nearly half the population of the United States on a burning island surrounded by ocean. For decades, Java's volcanoes have followed predictable patterns. Mount Merapi erupts every few years with explosive dome collapses. Mount Semeru produces steady strombolian activity. Mount Raung awakens sporadically with ash-producing explosions. Separate systems, separate schedules, separate threats. This morning's synchronized eruptions shattered those patterns forever. Dr. Surono, former head of Indonesia's Center for Volcanology and Geological Hazard Mitigation, was monitoring both systems when they exploded within 34 seconds of each other. He said that in 40 years of volcanic surveillance, he had never witnessed simultaneous eruptions across such distances. He spoke from the Emergency Command Center in Bandung. The seismic data tells an extraordinary story. Mount Raung's eruption at 7 AM and 26 seconds generated pressure waves that propagated through Java's bedrock at 8 kilometers per hour. Those same waves arrived at Mount Semeru's location at exactly 7:01 AM, 34 seconds later, precisely when Semeru exploded. But here is what makes this discovery terrifying. Real-time monitoring shows those pressure waves did not stop at Semeru. They continued racing through Java's volcanic spine, reaching Mount Bromo at 7:15 AM, Mount Merapi at 7:32 AM, and Mount Khulud at 7:45 AM. Each location shows immediate increases in seismic activity, gas emissions, and ground deformation. Studies from Stanford University and the Indonesian Institute of Sciences in recent years have identified what they term pressure highways beneath Java, channels through which pressure changes in one volcanic system can propagate to others within hours. This morning, we are witnessing the first real-world proof of this theoretical model. According to Dr. Christopher Kilburn of University College London, who has been studying Indonesian volcanism for decades, what we are seeing is unprecedented in modern volcanology. Java's volcanic systems are demonstrating network behaviour, coordinated responses that suggest deep underground connectivity. What makes this particularly concerning is that geophysical research has confirmed the existence of shallow magma chambers just 1 to 3.5 kilometres below several volcanic centres in East Java. Studies of the Lamongan volcanic field in East Java have shown that some volcanoes may even share a single magma chamber feeding multiple edifices. Satellite imagery reveals the scope of the awakening. Thermal cameras detect elevated temperatures across 15 different volcanic systems. Gas spectrometers record simultaneous spikes in sulfur dioxide emissions from mountains hundreds of kilometers apart. GPS stations show synchronized ground deformation patterns, indicating magma movement beneath multiple locations. The evidence points to a single, shocking conclusion. Java's 127 volcanoes aren't separate threats. They're outlets for a planetary-scale pressure system that has been building stress since the massive 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake shifted tectonic forces across the entire region. And that system just announced it is ready to release 21 years of accumulated geological tension, with 145 million people living directly above the release valves. The synchronized awakening of Java's volcanoes will not stay confined to Indonesia's borders. Within hours of this morning's eruptions, seismic monitoring stations across the Pacific Ring of Fire detected unusual activity. The Philippines reported increased tremors at Mount Mayon. Japan's Sakurajima volcano showed elevated gas emissions. Even distant volcanic systems in Chile and Alaska registered subtle changes in their seismic signatures. Scientists call it stress transfer, the way major geological events send shockwaves through Earth's interconnected fault networks. But Java's volcanic awakening represents something far more dangerous than regional stress transfer. It represents the potential activation of the world's most populated volcanic system. The economic implications alone are staggering. Java produces 60% of Indonesia's rice, the staple food for 270 million people. The island contains Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, its main port system, and 40% of its industrial capacity. A coordinated volcanic eruption could cripple the world's fourth most populous nation and send shockwaves through global supply chains. But the threat extends far beyond economics. Java sits at the center of critical international shipping lanes connecting Asia, Australia, and Europe. The Strait of Malacca and Sunda Strait, both flanked by Java's volcanic systems, handle 25% of global maritime trade. Volcanic ash clouds and tsunami waves could shut down shipping routes that feed 3 billion people. The refugee crisis would dwarf anything in human history. 145 million people trapped on a 1,000-kilometre island with limited evacuation routes. Indonesia's government estimates it could evacuate perhaps 5 million people by air and sea transport in a best-case scenario. That leaves 140 million residents with nowhere to run when ash clouds block airports and pyroclastic flows race toward coastlines. And then there is the climate impact. Computer models show that coordinated eruptions across Java could inject 50 times more sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere than the 1991 Mount Pinatubo eruption, enough to drop global temperatures by 2 to 3 degrees Celsius and disrupt agricultural seasons across multiple continents. The chain reaction would not stop there. Massive volcanic ash clouds would ground air traffic across Southeast Asia, stranding millions of travellers and cutting communication links between Asia and Australia. Submarine volcanic activity could trigger tsunami waves affecting coastlines from India to California. The Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System, designed for earthquake-generated waves, has no protocols for volcanic tsunamis. What makes this scenario even more alarming is the discovery that much of East Java's volcanic activity may be influenced by lateral migration of magma underground. Research from the Arjuno Welirang volcanic complex revealed magmatic intrusions penetrating organic-rich sediments with hydrothermal fluid migration happening at depths of around 4.5 kilometers, connecting magma chambers with distant surface vents. What started as two volcanoes erupting simultaneously this morning could cascade into the first truly global natural disaster, an event that disrupts food production, transportation networks, and climate systems across every inhabited continent. Picture this: Java's volcanic awakening accelerates beyond all scientific models. Within 24 hours of this morning's synchronized eruptions, the pressure waves racing through Java's bedrock trigger a cascade of responses. Mount Bromo explodes at dawn, sending ash clouds racing towards Surabaya's international airport. Mount Kalud follows at midday with pyroclastic flows that reach 800 degrees Celsius, racing down slopes at 100 kilometers per hour toward villages that house 2 million people. By evening, Mount Merapi, Indonesia's most deadly volcano, joins the symphony with its signature explosive dome collapse. This time, the pyroclastic flows don't stop at the usual 7-kilometer danger zone. Fed by synchronized pressure from across Java's vast volcanic network, the superheated gas and rock debris reach 15 kilometers, engulfing the city of Yogyakarta. Jakarta, 400 kilometers away, begins to feel the effects. The island plunges into darkness as ash clouds merge overhead. Emergency services collapse as communication towers topple under the weight of volcanic debris. Soekarno-Hatta International Airport shuts down indefinitely. The port of Tanjung Priok, Indonesia's largest shipping hub, becomes unreachable as tsunami waves generated by submarine volcanic collapses slam into Jakarta Bay. Across the Java Sea, waves 10 meters high race towards Singapore, Malaysia, and southern Thailand. The volcanic tsunami arrives without earthquake warnings, catching coastal cities completely unprepared. Resort islands that house thousands of tourists vanish beneath walls of water carrying volcanic debris like battering rams. Back on Java, 145 million people face an impossible choice: shelter in place as ash falls turn day into night, or attempt evacuation on highways that lead directly through active volcanic zones. Emergency centres overflow beyond capacity. Hospitals run out of oxygen masks as volcanic ash infiltrates air conditioning systems. Power grids fail as transmission lines snap under the weight of accumulated debris. The terrifying reality is that Java's volcanic architecture seems designed for maximum destruction. The large number of active vents, Mamsfed 127 across the island, means that no matter where you are within the impact zone of at least one volcano. The high population density, nearly 1,000 people per square kilometre, creates a human density that evacuation systems simply were not designed to handle. What makes this scenario truly nightmarish is the demonstrated connectivity between volcanic systems. Seismologists have verified that pressure waves from today's initial eruptions travelled through Java's bedrock at speeds matching theoretical models. Precisely. As each new volcano joins the chorus, it adds its own pressure signature to the wavefront, creating what volcanologists call resonance cascade, a self-reinforcing wave of activation that grows stronger with each new eruption. Within 72 hours, what fisherman Ahmad Sutrisno witnessed as two mountains burning simultaneously becomes the opening act of the largest natural disaster in human history. An entire island nation burning beneath 145 million trapped residents, with rescue ships unable to approach shores lined with active volcanoes and tsunami debris. To understand why Java's synchronized eruptions represent a fundamental shift in volcanic science, you need to understand what makes this island unlike anywhere else on Earth. Java sits above a subduction zone where oceanic crust plunges into Earth's mantle at an angle so steep and so fast that it creates what geologists call a volcanic assembly line. Every year, 7 centimeters of seafloor disappears into the mantle, melting and rising as magma that feeds 127 active volcanic systems across 1,000 kilometers of island chain. Recent deep Earth imaging using seismic tomography has revealed the extraordinary architecture beneath Java. The island doesn't sit above separate, isolated magma chambers. Instead, this region sits above a vast network of interconnected conduits, fault systems and pressure chambers that extend up to 700 kilometers deep into Earth's mantle. Dr. Indra Gunawan's research team at the Indonesian Institute of Sciences has mapped these connections using 15 years of seismic data. Their findings, published just months before this morning's synchronized eruptions, show that pressure changes in one volcanic system can propagate to others within hours through what they call geological pressure highways. The synchronized timing of this morning's eruptions provides the first real-world proof of their theoretical models. Mount Raung's explosion at 7 o'clock and 26 seconds in the morning generated pressure waves that travelled through solid rock at precisely the speed their equations predicted. Mount Semeru's response 34 seconds later occurred exactly when their pressure wave calculations showed maximum stress transfer. What's particularly fascinating about Java's volcanic network is how it varies across the island. In East Java, where today's synchronized eruptions began, scientists have discovered extraordinary connectivity between volcanic systems. Studies from the Lamongan volcanic field revealed the presence of one or more shallow magma chambers between 1 and 3.5 kilometers deep that feed multiple volcanic edifices. This explains why eruptions can propagate so quickly across this region. But the current crisis goes beyond proving theoretical connectivity. Real-time monitoring reveals that Java's volcanic network is experiencing what scientists call resonance cascade, a process where each eruption amplifies the stress signals reaching neighbouring systems. Think of it like a volcanic orchestra tuning up. Each instrument, each volcano, responds to the vibrations of its neighbours, creating increasingly complex harmonies until the entire symphony erupts at once. The seismic signatures detected this morning show Java's volcanoes are approaching that critical resonance frequency. Current gas emission data supports the resonance theory. Satellites detect sulfur dioxide plumes rising simultaneously from locations that should have completely independent gas systems. GPS, ground deformation measurements, show synchronized uplift patterns across distances that traditional volcanism cannot explain. Perhaps most disturbing, the stress calculations indicate this morning's synchronized eruptions released less than 3% of the total pressure built up since the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake. If Java's volcanic network continues responding as a unified system, the remaining 97% could discharge through dozens of simultaneous eruptions. The unprecedented nature of the threat has forced scientists to develop entirely new monitoring protocols. Traditional volcano surveillance focuses on individual mountains. Java requires monitoring an entire island as a single, interconnected volcanic entity, something no one has ever attempted before. Fisherman Ahmad Sutrisno's radio call this morning came from the waters off Banyuwangi, where he was checking nets just 15 kilometers from Mount Raung's explosive awakening. Within minutes of his first report, emergency services received 847 similar calls from across eastern Java. Residents of Bondowoso reported windows shattering from sonic booms. Families in Jember described ash beginning to fall like grey snow. School children in Lumajang were evacuated as the ground beneath their classrooms started to tremor. But these communities represent just the beginning of Java's human geography. Nightmare. Unlike volcanic threats in sparsely populated areas, Java's 127 active volcanoes are surrounded by cities, towns and villages that house 145 million people, more than the populations of Germany and France combined. The city of Yogyakarta, home to 3.5 million people, sits 25 kilometers from Mount Merapi, close enough that previous eruptions have buried neighborhoods in pyroclastic flows. Malang, with 2.5 million residents, lies directly between the now synchronizing Mount Semeru and Mount Bromo systems. The port city of Surabaya houses 9 million people within 50 kilometers of multiple active volcanic systems. This human geography reflects Java's extraordinary fertility, a direct result of volcanic activity that has enriched the island's soils for thousands of years. Nearly every square metre of arable land on Java is intensively cultivated, supporting one of the world's most densely populated islands. But the volcanic systems that created this fertility now threaten to destroy it all at once. Emergency evacuation plans designed for individual volcanic threats, become meaningless when multiple systems activate simultaneously. Highway networks that could handle single volcano evacuations would collapse under the traffic load from coordinated eruptions. Airport capacity that might evacuate tens of thousands becomes insufficient for millions. The most vulnerable populations have no evacuation options at all. Rural villages on volcanic slopes, elderly residents in care facilities, and fishing communities on remote coastlines. These populations depend on rescue services that would be overwhelmed within hours of a major synchronized eruption. The economic devastation extends far beyond Java's borders. The island produces 60% of Indonesia's rice, feeding 270 million people across Southeast Asia. Jakarta's port handles 65% of Indonesia's international trade. The island's industrial zones manufacture electronics, textiles, and automotive parts for global markets. For families like those fleeing ashfall in Jember this morning, Java's synchronized volcanic awakening isn't just a geological curiosity. It is the beginning of a crisis that could displace entire generations and reshape the economic geography of Southeast Asia. Right now, as you watch this video, seismic monitors across Java continue recording the underground conversation that started with this morning's synchronized eruptions. Indonesia's National Disaster Management Authority has escalated to Crisis Level 4, maximum emergency status requiring coordination between military, civilian, and international resources. Emergency monitoring protocols now track 127 volcanic systems simultaneously, something never attempted in the history of volcanism. But even with unprecedented monitoring capabilities, scientists admit they cannot predict how quickly Java's volcanic network will complete its awakening. Dr. Surono, coordinating the emergency response, warns that synchronized eruptions represent uncharted territory in volcanic science. Traditional forecasting methods assume individual volcanoes. We are now monitoring an entire island as a single geological entity. Current data shows the pressure waves triggered by this morning's eruptions are still propagating through Java's volcanic spine. 15 volcanic systems now show elevated seismic activity. 23 monitoring stations detect increased gas emissions. Satellite radar identifies ground deformation patterns suggesting magma movement beneath multiple systems. 8 separate locations. The terrifying uncertainty. Volcanic networks can remain in heightened states for months, or explode into coordinated eruptions within hours. The 1883 Krakatoa explosion gave only minutes of warning before reshaping the entire region. Real-time satellite monitoring from the Darwin Volcanic Ash Advisory Center shows ash plumes from Mount Rung and Mount Semeru already merging into a single cloud stretching over 200 kilometers. Airports across eastern Java have suspended operations as visibility drops below safety minimums. Indonesian military vessels are positioning along Java's northern coast, but their combined capacity could evacuate less than 0.1% of the at-risk population. As emergency services struggle to develop evacuation protocols for 145 million people, as international aid organizations position rescue assets around Java's coastline, as scientists analyze seismic data that rewrites textbooks in real time, one question haunts every expert monitoring this crisis. Will Java's volcanic awakening give its trapped population time to escape, or are we witnessing the opening act of the largest natural disaster in human history? Ahmed Sutrisno's fishing boat may have provided the first eyewitness account of synchronized volcanism in Java's recorded history, but his radio call this morning might also mark the beginning of the largest trapped population crisis ever documented. What would you do if you were one of 145 million people living on an island where multiple volcanoes just started erupting? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay ahead of Earth's most powerful forces, Subscribe to Earth Attacks now.